Somewhere in northern Russia, in a morgue in Arkhangelsk, lies the remains of an Australian hero. Inside a plastic box, a man who earned the Victoria Cross, the highest honour for valour in the British Empire. He stormed machine gun nests at Gallipoli, survived the hell of the Somme, earned both the military medal and the Victoria Cross for acts of extraordinary courage. And yet, a century later, his body lies forgotten in a morgue freezer, unclaimed, unburied, caught in bureaucratic limbo between three nations. This is the story of Sergeant Samuel George Pearse, Australia's lost hero. Born on the 16th of July 1897 in Penarth, Glamorganshire, Wales, Samuel George Pearse was a coal miner's son. At 14, Sam boards a ship with his family, his father George Stapleton Pearse seeking opportunity in a new land. Destination: Australia. The family settles at Corlong, near Mildura in Victoria. Sam becomes a labourer, working the land, fruit picking, trapping rabbits, even serving as a deckhand on the paddle steamer Viola. Tough work, honest pay, but there's a restlessness in him, a fierce loyalty, an intolerance for idleness. When war breaks out in 1914, thousands of young Australian men answer the call. On the 5th of July 1915, just days before his 18th birthday, Sam Pearse enlists in the Australian Imperial Force. His occupation listed: rabbit trapper. His mates describe him as fearless, modest, unshakable. And there's something else they notice early on. If someone was in trouble, Sam Pearse would already be running toward it. On the 10th of September 1915, Pearse sails from Melbourne aboard the Star of Victoria with the 9th Reinforcements for the 7th Battalion. He reaches Gallipoli in December, just before the evacuation, spending 2 weeks in the line, witnessing the final days of that doomed campaign. Then comes France. After transferring to the 2nd Machine Gun Company in August 1916, Pearse sees action across the Western Front. The meat grinder that was Polygon Wood, Bullecourt, Ypres. On the 24th of August 1916, he's wounded, but soon returns to his unit. The war chews through men like machinery, but Pearse doesn't flinch. On the night of the 18th of September 1917, while on outpost duty on the western edge of Glencorse Wood, east of Ypres, Pearse spots a light shine momentarily in a German post some distance ahead. He warns his comrades, then creeps forward alone and drops bombs into the position. The Germans evacuate. For this action, his military medal citation reads, "Normally this man is a runner, and throughout he showed an utter disregard of danger in carrying messages, guiding parties and in bringing in wounded men on every return run." According to military historian records, Pearse was awarded his military medal in the field by General Sir William Birdwood himself. But Birdwood had run out of medals that day and decorated Pearse with a strip of medal ribbon instead. Pearse was promoted to Lance Corporal in November 1917, then Corporal in April 1918. January 1918. While on leave in England, Sam meets Catherine Knox, known as Kitty. She's an ambulance driver serving in the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps. Romance blossoms despite the war. Then, on the 19th of May, 1918, Pearse is wounded again in action, this time seriously enough to be invalided to England for treatment. It's during this recovery period that he and Kitty become engaged. Later, on the 1st of June 1919, they marry in Durham. When Kitty becomes pregnant, they decide to delay their return to Australia. November 11th, 1918, the guns fall silent. For most men, the war ends. Peace has come, or so it seems. But for Sam Pearse, peace feels incomplete. While his Australian comrades sail home, Pearse makes a choice that will define and end his life. On the 18th of July 1919, he's discharged from the AIF and re-enlists, this time under the British flag with the 45th Battalion, Royal Fusiliers. His destination: North Russia. The Allied intervention in Russia's civil war, a forgotten conflict, the war after the war. British, American and Commonwealth troops fight Bolshevik forces in the frozen north around Arkhangelsk, Murmansk and Emtsa. It's a brutal, confusing campaign with Arctic cold, guerrilla warfare, endless forests and a political situation that changes by the day. Around 150 Australian soldiers volunteer for the North Russia Relief Force. Many had come late to action in the First World War, but Pearse is a battle-hardened veteran, and he's soon promoted to sergeant under the command of Brigadier General Lionel Sadleir Jackson. August 29, 1919, near the village of Emtsa in northern Russia. The Bolsheviks hold a fortified battery position on the far side of a defensive line, and machine gun fire rakes the British advance. Men are pinned down, the assault stalls, casualties mounting. Without orders, Sergeant Pearse moves forward. He cuts his way through the enemy's barbed wire under very heavy machine gun and rifle fire, clearing a path for the troops to enter the battery position. But there's a blockhouse ahead, harassing the advance, causing more casualties. Pearse charges the blockhouse single-handed, killing the occupants with bombs. The position falls silent. The path is clear. Moments later, he's cut down by another Russian machine gun, dead before he hits the ground, 22 years old. His posthumous Victoria Cross citation, gazetted in the London Gazette on the 21st of October 1919, reads, "For most conspicuous bravery, devotion to duty and self-sacrifice during the operation against the enemy battery position north of Emtsa, North Russia, on the 29th August 1919. This gallant non-commissioned officer met his death a minute later, and it was due to him that the position was carried with so few casualties. His magnificent bravery and utter disregard for personal danger won for him the admiration of all troops." Kitty Knox receives word of her husband's death. On the 21st of October 1919, she attends Buckingham Palace, where King George V presents her with Sam's Victoria Cross. 5 months later, in February 1920, she gives birth to their daughter. She names her Victoria Catherine Sarah Pearse, the initials VC, a reminder of the medal her father would never see, the honour he'd never know. Sam Pearse is buried hastily by his comrades in a military graveyard near the Obozerskaya railway station between Emsa and Arkhangelsk. A photograph taken in September 1919 shows his grave intact, marked with whitewashed stones. But the front is collapsing, the Allied intervention is failing, and records are incomplete, maps are vague. By the time the British forces withdraw, Sam Pearse's grave is lost. All visible traces of the graveyard eventually disappear, swallowed by the Russian wilderness. The Commonwealth War Graves Commission lists him as buried in the Obozerskaya burial ground, then later commemorated at the Archangel Allied Cemetery, where plaques on the walls list the names of all those buried elsewhere. No marker, no coordinates, no closure. For decades, nothing. A hero without a grave. After more than 10 years of part-time searching, a small team of Russian volunteers makes a breakthrough. Guided by a 1925 map and a 1919 aerial photograph, they locate a grave in the forests near Emtsa. The remains are exhumed. The skeleton is the same height as Sergeant Pearse, 5'6". Remains of a slouch hat are found in the grave. The grave location matches precisely with the 1925 map. A toe is missing from the right foot, exactly as mentioned in Pearse's Australian Army medical records from before he arrived in Russia. The whitewashed stones found during the exhumation appear to be those shown in the 1919 photograph. Hope reignites. Finally, after a century, closure for the family. On the 29th of August 2019, exactly 100 years after his death, a brief ceremony takes place at the remains of the bunker where Pearse died. 9 people attend, 7 Russians, including 3 members of the search team, a priest, an interpreter, a reporter and her cameraman, and 2 Australians, historian Damien Wright, and a representative from the family. It's an unofficial commemoration, but it feels like the beginning of something, the beginning of bringing Sam Pearse home. The remains are taken to the Arkhangelsk morgue and placed in a plastic bag inside a plastic box, awaiting DNA identification before authorities will consider a dignified burial with military honours. And there they stay. 6 years pass. 6 years. Who is responsible for bringing him home? The British say he died under their command, serving in a British Army battalion. The Australians say he's one of theirs, an Australian citizen who earned his first decorations fighting for the AIF. The Russians say prove it with DNA testing, but the DNA testing is blocked, permissions stall, agreements unravel. The Commonwealth War Graves Commission, responsible for commemorating 1.7 million Commonwealth War dead, has a long-standing policy established after the First World War: no repatriation of war dead. The principle was equality in death. All soldiers, regardless of rank or wealth, were to remain where they fell, buried together near the battlefields. It was a policy born from the chaos of the Great War, designed to prevent wealthy families from retrieving their dead while the poor were left behind. But others argue Samuel Pearse's case is different. He was never properly buried in a marked Commonwealth war grave. His grave was lost, forgotten. He's not resting peacefully in a maintained cemetery. He's in a plastic box in a Russian morgue. Author Damien Wright, who wrote Australia's Lost Heroes, poses the question on the campaign website. How can a nation that honours the supreme sacrifice of its citizens at such hallowed sites as the Australian War Memorial allow this situation to continue? In December 2024, RSL National President Greg Mellick writes to Deputy Prime Minister and Defence Minister Richard Marles, urging him to negotiate with Russian authorities to have the remains formally identified and returned to Australia. Mellick states, "After more than 100 years, the time to resolve this indignity is long past. I have urged the government to take the necessary action and commence negotiations with the Russian authorities to have the remains formally identified and for Sergeant Samuel Pearse VCMM to be returned to Australia to be interred with suitable honours." As of now, there's been no public response from the Australian government, no progress toward a resolution. The impasse continues. Sam Pearse's Victoria Cross, Military Medal and 1914 to 1915 star are on display in the Hall of Valour at the Australian War Memorial in Canberra. His photo sits beside them. A young man, determined, gone too soon. The medals are there, but the man who earned them is not. He didn't die in a hospital bed. He didn't fade quietly into history. He charged a machine gun nest, knowing the cost, to save his comrades. And a century later, his courage sits in a filing cabinet somewhere between 3 foreign ministries. His sacrifice, undisputed. His resting place, a plastic box. His daughter Victoria never met him. She carried his initials and his story her entire life. The family continues to push for his return, supported by veterans, historians, and Australians who believe a Victoria Cross recipient deserves better than this. If remembering our heroes matters, if the words "lest we forget" mean anything at all, then this fight isn't over.